September 11, 2001, began like any other Tuesday. New Yorkers rushed towards subway stations. Coffee shops filled with commuters. Ferries crossed the Hudson River. Wall Street prepared for another day of trading. Thousands of office workers entered the Twin Towers, never imagining their lives would change forever. The skyline looked peaceful. No one knew that within an hour, New York City would face one of the darkest days in American history. Yet hidden within that tragedy was an extraordinary story of courage, a rescue carried out not by the military, but by ordinary Americans. American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower. For a moment, nobody understood what had happened. Some believed it was a terrible accident. Smoke poured into the sky. Office workers stared from nearby buildings. Emergency responders rushed toward the scene. Then, 17 minutes later, a second aircraft slammed into the South Tower. The horrifying truth became unmistakable. America was under attack. Within minutes, roads into Lower Manhattan closed. Bridges became overcrowded. Subway service stopped. Tunnels shut down. The city that never sleeps suddenly became trapped. Hundreds of thousands of people found themselves stranded on an island. No buses, no trains, no way out, except one, the water. Then, the United States Coast Guard made an extraordinary announcement. Every available boat, come to Lower Manhattan. There was no detailed plan, no organized fleet, no rehearsals, just a desperate call for help. And America answered. Within minutes, ferry captains, fishing boats, tour boats, police vessels, fireboats, private yacht owners, even tugboats, turned toward Manhattan. No one asked who would pay. No one asked whether it was dangerous. They simply went. As thick black smoke spread across Lower Manhattan, something extraordinary began to appear on the water. From every direction, boats, large ferries, small fishing boats, police patrol vessels, fireboats, private yachts, tour boats, tugboats, captains who had never met one another somehow moved with remarkable purpose. Many had no orders beyond one simple message from the Coast Guard. All available boats, report to Lower Manhattan. They didn't know what they would find. They didn't know if another attack was coming. They only knew that thousands of people needed help. One by one, they tied up at makeshift docks and seawalls. There were no organized boarding gates, no ticket booths, no schedules, only fear and hope. What followed would become the largest civilian water evacuation in history. Above them, the towers burned. Below them, the streets filled with ash. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. Office workers removed their high heels and walked barefoot. Business executives carried complete strangers. Police officers directed crowds toward the waterfront. Firefighters continued moving in the opposite direction, toward the danger. Parents held frightened children close. Some covered their mouths with shirts. Others held hands with co-workers they had only met days before. No one knew if another plane was coming. No one knew if the buildings would collapse. Yet amid the uncertainty, people helped each other. There was no panic at the docks. Only long lines, silent prayers, and the desperate hope that another boat would arrive. Every boat became a lifeline. Passengers climbed aboard as quickly as possible. There was no time for names, no passenger lists, no tickets. Captains simply filled every available space. The boats crossed the Hudson River, then returned immediately, again, and again, and again. Many crews worked non-stop for hours. Volunteers handed out bottled water. Blankets appeared from nowhere. Medical workers treated those struggling to breathe. People who had escaped looked back toward Manhattan in complete silence. Behind them, the skyline they had known all their lives was disappearing beneath smoke. Then, at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. A massive cloud of dust swept through Lower Manhattan. Even those on the boat stopped and stared. Just 29 minutes later, the North Tower also fell. Entire city blocks disappeared beneath darkness. For many rescuers, it was impossible to believe what they had witnessed. Yet despite the danger, the evacuation never stopped. Boat after boat continued returning to Manhattan, because thousands were still waiting, and every minute mattered. Hour after hour, the boats continued, without central coordination, without rehearsals, without knowing whether another attack would come. By sunset, an estimated 500,000 people had been evacuated from Lower Manhattan. More than 500 boats had answered the call. It remains the largest maritime evacuation in history, larger than the famous evacuation of Dunkirk during World War II. Historians would later describe it as one of the greatest spontaneous rescue operations ever carried out. Not because of advanced technology, not because of military planning, but because ordinary people chose to help strangers. The story of September 11th is often told through unimaginable loss, but it is also a story of extraordinary courage. Hundreds of boat captains never considered themselves heroes. Many simply said, it was the right thing to do. Some risked their own lives. Others returned to Manhattan again and again until every seat on their boat had carried someone to safety. No medals were expected, no rewards were requested. The greatest achievement was knowing that another family would be reunited. The 9/11 Boatlift reminds us that in humanity's darkest moments, ordinary people can become extraordinary. When fear filled the skies, hope arrived across the water. More than 2 decades later, the names of many captains have faded from memory, but the lives they saved continue. Their courage lives on in every survivor who stepped onto those boats. And perhaps, that is the greatest legacy of all. If this story moved you, consider sharing it so that these forgotten heroes are never forgotten again.